Hello, and welcome to How an Author Assistant Can Grow Your Business. I'm Kate Tilton, founder of Kate Tilton's Author Services, LLC, and today we'll be learning about the difference between a virtual assistant and an author assistant, the benefits of adding an author assistant to your team, and how to find the right author assistant for your needs. But first, here's a little bit about my background. I founded Kate Tilton's Author Services, LLC in 2010. I'm the creator and host of Kate Chat, which is a weekly Twitter chat held on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Kate Chat is a publishing-related chat for authors and readers. I've also appeared on some popular media like Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, RT Books Reviews, The Book Designer, Kobo Writing Life, and Rappelcopter, either as a guest or quoted or things of that nature. If you follow me on social media, it won't be a surprise that I am a huge cat and tea lover and extremely geeky. You can find me at katetilton.com where you can get more details on my backstory. Now, in order to understand how an author assistant can help you, first we need to know exactly what an author assistant is. An author assistant is a person who provides services for an author or authors exclusively. Author assistants come with a variety of skills, much like the authors they work for. For example, an author assistant may be a virtual assistant working remotely only, a personal assistant working directly with the author in a physical location, or a mix of the two. Unlike a normal virtual or personal assistant, author assistants specialize in working with and for authors. So unlike other service providers, author assistants tend to have a wide variety of skills and tasks that they will complete versus, say, a cover designer who will design your cover. Okay, so the definition of an author assistant may sound similar to what you'd find with a virtual assistant, but what's the difference? An author assistant in many cases is a virtual assistant. The difference is in the field that they specialize in, working with authors. So the big difference with that specialty is the knowledge that they have. So the benefits of having an author assistant versus a generic assistant: your author assistant will understand publishing. So usually author assistants are people that have been involved in publishing for years. Maybe they started out as a book blogger. Maybe they've just been a lifelong reader. In some cases, they could have worked for a publishing house in like the marketing department. Whatever the case may be, an author assistant is going to be plugged into the publishing world, whereas your typical virtual assistant more than likely will come from the corporate world. So while they have tons of amazing skills, they might not know everything that's going on right now in publishing. Beyond not knowing about publishing, your virtual assistant might not have the same connections an author assistant will in publishing. Like any other job field, the more that you're involved in the community, the more connections you make, and the connections your author assistant have benefit you as the author. Author assistants also can serve as a sounding board for your writing ideas. Now, a virtual assistant might be able to do that, but if they're not super involved in the reading and publishing community, they might not be the best person to bounce ideas off of. Author assistants will also have skills that are required for publishing that generic assistants do not. By that, it could be something like your assistant might know how to format books, or they might know how to upload books to different retailers like Amazon or Kobo. Your author assistant has taken years to really craft the skills that are required and uniquely involved in publishing, whereas your generic assistant is going to be someone who more than likely is more comfortable with things like keeping track of a calendar, handling meetings, and that sort of thing. Okay, so now that we've gone over the difference between a generic virtual assistant and an author assistant, let's talk about the benefits of adding an author assistant to your team. Author assistants can help you by, number one, saving your valuable time. This is the top reason to hire an author assistant. Just because you can do a task does not mean it is cost-effective or practical. Most authors simply do not have enough time in the day to complete their writing and the other marketing and admin tasks they need to do. By hiring an author assistant, the author has more time to focus on what only they can do, which is write. So this is hugely important. It's a cost versus benefits ratio, right? You might be able to do all of the tasks that you give your assistant, but you only have so many hours in the day and you need those to write the next book to bring in that next paycheck. So this is something to think about even when it comes in terms of what you're going to pay your assistant, because depending on how much time that assistant takes on that task and how much time it would take you, you'll find that you can basically make an equation. So if there's a task that would take you only 1 hour to complete, and say your hourly rate was $50, and that same task would take an assistant 2 hours to complete, and they charged $20 an hour, well, that would be $40 compared to your $50. So you'd be saving $10 by having an assistant, even though they're taking 2 hours to do the task, which is 1 more hour than it would take you. The second thing that author assistants can do for you is to support and encourage you. Author assistants are on your team. Publishing, no matter what route an author takes, can be tough. Having a passionate assistant on your team can be invaluable. An author assistant can be just what you need to help you meet your deadlines, organize your material, and cheer you up on gloomy days. So, unlike giving someone just a task to do, so just outsourcing tasks, an author assistant becomes part of your team. So, essentially, we're in it with you. We want you to succeed. We want you to meet your deadlines. And we want to be there for you when things are rough. Now, not every assistant will be as personal. I like to be close with my authors because I think it's really important for us to have that relationship where, you get a bad review, I could be a person that you call to talk about it, because no matter how much our family wants to be there to support us, they don't always understand what it's like in publishing. Your author assistant, as someone who's involved in publishing, does understand. So we can be a really good sounding board for things like that. So whether it's a bad review, or you're just stuck in this revision and can't seem to get out of it, or you have this deadline that you're trying to meet, your author assistant can be someone to support you and encourage you. Your third thing that author assistants can do that can help you is the motivation and goal setting. So kind of like what we talked about in point 2, sometimes you just need someone to talk to keep track of things and to keep you moving forward to your dreams. Author assistants really rock at that. Like I said, we are a partnership, and we want to make sure that you are going towards your goals and that we are helping you get there. I take it very seriously that I'm an assistant, and that's what it means. Like, I assist other people. I help them reach their goals. All right, let's talk about some of the specific tasks that your assistant may handle so that you have more time to write. Author assistants all have different skills. So depending on the assistant you approach, their list of services is going to be vastly different than, me or another assistant that you'll approach. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do to kind of give you some ideas. So when I work with authors, my tasks usually fall under one of 2 categories: administration and marketing. So on the administration side, that can be things like sending information about the authors or their books to those who request it, updating websites, organizing spreadsheets, mailing out prizes to readers, so literally being the person that goes to the post office. I've also done things like pulling sales reports and organizing that data. One of the big things I hear from authors is, I'm not organized. So if you are one of those many authors who are just not organized, having an assistant who is very organized is hugely, hugely helpful, especially when it comes to tax time where you need things like your sales reports to be all in order. Now, on the marketing side of things, that can be things like reaching out to reviewers, creating book jacket copy. So, for example, I've worked with authors where they've given me their first draft and I've picked it apart, sent it back. We've talked on the phone and kind of created this book jacket copy together. There's also running street teams or launch teams, which is very, very time consuming. And luckily your assistant can take on most of the tasks required to manage those teams, and kind of keep up with things like Amazon's changing policies, or other retailers' policies, to make sure that your team is running smoothly and following all of those rules. Another thing with marketing could be creating newsletters or managing your blog. So in some cases that could be the author will send me the Word document with the content and say, "Here, Kate, please make sure this looks nice and goes out on the right time." And that is something that I do. And there really is so much more that assistants can do. So before you hire an assistant, it's important to know what tasks you need to be completed. Almost anything that is taking up your time and that you wish you could be using to write, it can be outsourced. Most assistants will list the services they provide on their websites, so I highly recommend writing out a list of tasks you do or would like to do and deciding which of these tasks you could hand off to an assistant. So this can be kind of a little workshop, but essentially you want to sit down and write one list, write everything that you do to make your books a reality. And I mean write down everything. So from the writing process, the editing, the emails, every single thing that you do to get your book from idea to completion. Then write a second list. This list is things that you want to do, so things that you heard. So say you read this article and it had this really great marketing idea, and you were like, "Oh, I really want to do this," but you have not had time to do it. Write that down on a second list. Now go through both lists and figure out what things someone else could do. So for example, writing is going to be on that list and that's not something you're going to hand over, but something like managing my emails might be something that can be handed over to an assistant. Now, with that, you want to go through and figure out of that list of narrowed down things that can be handled by someone else, what things are you willing to give up control over to an assistant? Basically, what are you willing to delegate? And from there, you're going to have your list that you can use to figure out who's the right assistant for you. Is an author assistant right for you? So I'd like you to ask yourself these questions. 1, are you feeling overwhelmed by the work piling up around you? 2, are there things you know you should be doing, but you don't have the time to do them without sacrificing either sleep or your writing time? 3, are you willing to delegate your work? And 4, do you have the funds in your budget you can use to pay for help? So kind of like we talked about on the previous slide, but essentially you need to be able to say yes to these questions in order to be at the point where you can hire an assistant. So sometimes an assistant isn't for everyone. Some people are not willing to delegate their work. Sometimes they don't have the funds in their budget, or sometimes they don't have as much as they thought they did when they sit down and write that list, and that is okay. But if you are saying yes to these questions, it may be time to consider hiring an author assistant. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so now that you've gone through and you've created lists of tasks that you do and decided which things you're willing to delegate and that you do have the funds you're willing to put towards having an assistant, let's talk about the factors to consider when looking for an assistant. The first is price. So like many service-based occupations, the more experience an assistant has, the more you're likely to pay. But you can find talented assistants at any experience level. A student, for example, may work for as little as $5 an hour with college credit. So essentially as an internship. The trade-off in paying less is that you're going to spend more time training your assistant because they will need to be able to show that they have learned something in their internship in order to get that college credit. If you're willing to pay a little bit more, an experienced assistant may charge anywhere from $25 to $60 an hour, depending on what skills they have, how long they've been working. So while that might seem like much, when you're comparing that to a marketing consultant who can charge anywhere from $150 to $300 an hour, author assistants can offer cost-effective help at any budget level. The second thing to consider is personality. Working with an author assistant, as I've said, is a partnership. Your assistant will be there to help you with any and everything, so make sure that you enjoy their company and communicate well with one another. So you might find that you interview an assistant, and although they have great skills and the price is right, they're just not the right fit for you and your personality, and that's okay. You really want to make sure that whoever you hire is going to be someone that you mesh well with and they can be a part of your team. Now, the third thing to consider is professionalism. So you want to make sure that the assistant is professional. Check their website and social media. Are there a lot of errors? Is there poor formatting? You want to look for assistants who pay attention to details and have clean, professional websites, and who also present themselves in a professional manner. So I think this is really important too, kind of with that personality. If you are someone who's very conservative, you do not want an assistant who is very out there. And same thing, if you're more eccentric, you're probably going to want an assistant who understands that. The fourth thing to look at is skills. So most assistants can guide you in the services that you need, but no one knows your book and the needs that you have better than you do. So take a few minutes to research the skills of each assistant and look for those that match your needs. So again, this is why I highly suggest writing a list of the things that you do and narrowing it down to the things you're willing to delegate. That way you can go on to different author assistants' websites and you can match the things you want with the things that they offer to make sure that they have the skills and offer those services. The last thing to look at is experience. So if you're hiring an employee for a company, you would look for recommendations, current and past work experiences. With assistants, the same type thing. You're going to be looking at, where have they worked before? Do they have recommendations from other authors? Are they listed in book acknowledgments? It's a good idea to check the author assistant's references just to be on the safe side. Now that you have those 5 considerations, it's time to find assistants so that you can find the right assistant for you. So where do you find an assistant? The number one thing I recommend authors do is ask their author friends for recommendations. Like anything, being able to know someone who has worked with someone, that word of mouth recommendation is the best. If you're friends with the author, you can ask them all those hard questions. They can put you in touch with their assistant if necessary. I find you'll find the best assistants this way. Now, if you don't have tons of author friends, or if your author friends don't have assistants, there are a few other resources you can look into. So one being the author assistant section on the Self-Publisher's Ultimate Resource Guide. This is by Joel Freelander and Betty Kelly Sargent. You'll see that I wrote the intro to this section, but that it is filled with a list of different assistants that you can check out. The other resources are Authors Atlas, so www.authorsatlas.com. This lists all kinds of different service professionals, but it includes a section just for author assistants. And then there's authorassistants.com, which, like the name implies, is just about author assistants. So you can find a whole directory here of listings for authors. Use these tools to find potential assistant choices, taking care to make sure your potential assistant offers the services you need and feels like the right person to have on your team. Use the factors to vet your potential assistant choices before making the plunge, and you'll be happy you did. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on how an author assistant can help you build your business. So for more information about author assistants, please go to katetilton.com/author-assistant. I list a bunch of different articles about author assistants, places you can find author assistants, and more there. For more author tips, I would love to see you on Kate Chat, which is Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We talk about tons of different topics and are a really great group to connect with. And you can connect with me on my website, katetilton.com, or on social media. I'll be K8Tilton on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever the channel, I'm probably there. All right, see you then.